This is not my first time standing in the Senior 3 classroom. On this exact day in my past life, most of my classmates and I followed Yi Xiaoheng to climb over the back wall to take a shortcut. A heavy truck speeding down the main road outside the wall shattered more than a dozen lives. I did everything I could to stop them, only to be met with jeers. After the accident, everyone shifted the blame onto me, claiming my ominous words had brought the disaster upon us. That piercing grievance lingered in me for over a decade, until I coughed up blood and drew my last breath alone in a rental flat. When I opened my eyes again, I was sent back to the moments before the catastrophe struck. Warning, what are you daydreaming about? Grab your stuff and let's go quickly. Someone nudged my arm gently. Chu Zhixia walked over to my desk clutching a stack of stationery. Her eyes tight with anxiety, she tapped the admission ticket on my desk rapidly, speaking at a breakneck pace. The main gate route is far too round, but it'll take at least the time it burns 2 incense sticks extra. If there's traffic jam on the way, we'll definitely miss the identity check before entering the exam hall. Zhao Heng scouted the path already. A section of bricks on the wall behind the teaching building is loose. Climb over, cross the road straight, and you'll reach the exam site. It saves so much time and energy. Most of the class agreed to take this way together. I lowered my eyes, smoothed out my admission ticket and slipped it neatly into a clear document pouch. My fingers tightened slightly, yet my face betrayed no emotion as I replied flatly, I need a moment to think it over. Chu Zhixia frowned and grabbed my wrist with a gentle, familiar grip unique to our years of close friendship. What's there to hesitate about? You're the only one dragging your feet in the whole class. Teacher Fang's warnings yesterday were all alarmist nonsense. There's hardly any traffic on that road normally, even though trucks pass often early in the morning. There's a whole group of us running across. Drivers will spot us from far away. Yi Xiaoheng, sitting in the front row, overheard our conversation and twisted around, one arm slung over the back of his chair, his tone carrying the overbearing stubbornness typical of teenage boys. Gao Wanning. Stop overthinking everything. I went to check the back wall yesterday on purpose. It only comes up to my chest. We can climb over easily stepping on the pile of bricks there. There's no need to take the long way and risk being late for the exam. If you miss the college entrance exam because you're running behind, won't all 3 years of grueling studying go to waste? Wei Xingyao chimed in right after, twirling a black ballpoint pen between his fingers with a careless expression. Xiaoheng's totally right. Going through the main gate is just asking for trouble. Walking that far in the sweltering heat will leave you soaked in sweat before you even sit down to write. You won't be able to focus on the papers. We'll help each other climb the wall and be at the exam venue in a heartbeat. It's foolproof. Shan Muyao also crowded over, fanning herself lightly with a paper fan, her eyes glinting with calculation. I calculated the travel time before leaving home this morning. Taking the back wall cuts at least half an hour off the trip. We could use that extra time to memorize 2 more essay templates by the exam gate. Such a smart move. Don't be so stubborn. Come with us. It'll be more fun with everyone around. The 4 of them took turns urging me to take the wall shortcut. The other classmates who'd overheard our talk turned around one after another to echo their words, packing up their stationery in clusters. Clearly having long resolved to follow Yi Xiaoheng's plan, I listened quietly to all their arguments, my heart turning ice cold. Their claims that drivers will see our group from a distance and there isn't much traffic on the road were naive words only those who'd never witnessed the tragedy could utter. That main thoroughfare was the mandatory route for freight vehicles heading out of the suburbs. Trucks flooded the road from 3 to 7 in the early morning. These large lorries had massive blind spots at the front, and the dim morning light made it nearly impossible for drivers to spot a crowd of students darting across the road in time. In my past life, knowing full well the danger ahead, I'd pulled aside every classmate planning to climb the wall and pleaded with them earnestly. But everyone thought I was overreacting and spineless. Some even mocked me openly for being too cowardly to fall, disgracing Senior 3 students. After the disaster struck, Yi Xiaoheng lost the use of one leg. Chu Zhixia suffered permanent brain damage. Wei Xingyao's arm was crushed in fractures, leaving him unable to hold a pen. Shan Muyao endured chronic internal organ pain for years. Not a single injured classmate remembered my earlier warnings with gratitude. Instead, They all complained to outsiders that my unlucky predictions had invited the fatal accident. Unfounded blame haunted me for half my life. Reborn into this life. I would never again act the fool who exhausts herself for nothing. Their lives were their own choice. Last time I tried warning them and only got cursed for it. Now I would only safeguard my own future. No longer draining myself for a group of people set on recklessness. Seeing I remained silent. Chu Jixia shook my wrist again, her tone softening with the warmth of our 2 years as desk mates. Wanning. We've sat side by side for 2 whole years. The college entrance exam is such an important day off course we should go together. It'll be lonely walking the main gate all by yourself. Come with us. I'll help you climb the wall. I lifted my gaze to meet hers. Her eyes shining with sincere invitation. In my previous life, I would have caved out of soft-heartedness, but now I knew exactly what awaited them. I forced a faint smile. My voice gentle yet unyielding. I prefer taking my time walking. I don't care about shaving off a few minutes. If you're in a hurry, go on ahead without me. At my reply, Yi Zhaoheng's brows knitted tightly together. Impatience edging into his voice. Why are you so stubborn and ungrateful? We're all looking out for you. Scared you'll miss the exam if you're late. Yet you won't appreciate it. Are you actually afraid of that short wall? Don't you have an ounce of courage? It's not cowardice. I simply want to follow the rules and use the main gate. I refused to argue with him, ducking my head to tidy the books in my desk drawer. Deliberately avoiding his direct stare. The school explicitly bans climbing over perimeter walls to leave campus. Abiding by school regulations can't be wrong. Can school rules matter more than the exam? Shan Muyao pouted and muttered under her breath. So rigid. No sense of flexibility. By the time we're all settled at the exam venue, you'll probably still be trudging along the road. Wei Xingyao stepped in to smooth things over. Forget it. Zhao Heng. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, we can't force her. Let's finish packing. We'll meet at the corner by the back wall in 15 minutes. If we wait longer, traffic will pick up and crossing the road will be even more dangerous. Yi Zhaoheng let out a cold huff. Tore his gaze away from me and stopped trying to convince me, turning to call out to the other classmates nearby. You all heard that, meet at the back wall in 15 minutes. Hurry up. Don't hold us up for entry. The classroom erupted into noise at once. Everyone scrambled to grab pencil cases, admission tickets and ID cards. Grouping up to discuss who would climb the wall first. Some said they were tall enough to pull others up from the top of the wall. Others pulled out tissue paper to cushion their palms against the rough bricks. Every single one of them only cared about saving time. None spared a single thought for the speeding trucks waiting beyond the wall. Seeing I still refused to change my mind, Chu Jixia reluctantly let go of my wrist and sighed. I won't push you then. If you hit traffic and can't make it to the exam hall, send me a message, and I'll try to talk the invigilator into letting you in. I nodded faintly without another word. My eyes drifting to the distant freight highway cutting across the suburbs outside the window. My heart utterly calm. I would not warn them of the truck hazard. I would not repeat the futile pleas of my past life. I would not walk alongside them toward the inevitable disaster. There was still a little time before their agreed meeting. I pretended to rummage for an eraser at the bottom of my desk, keeping half an eye on everyone's movements as I silently mapped out my route. Though longer, the main gate road had proper pavements on both sides and complete traffic lights, entirely bypassing the freight highway, even at a leisurely pace. I would reach the exam venue well before the exam started. It was the only truly safe route. Classmates around me stood up one after another, filing out the back door in groups. Chu Jixia glanced back at me and waved before she left. I nodded quietly in response. Yi Zhaoheng led the crowd at the front, loudly reminding everyone to bring all their documents as his voice faded into the distance. In less than the time it took to burn half an incense stick, the once noisy classroom emptied. Only a handful of students remaining. Most had headed for the back wall corner, leaving just 2 or 3 others like me packing up to take the main gate path. I double-checked all my documents and stationery to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. Then stood and walked toward the classroom's front door with steady, unhurried steps. Behind me, faint laughter of teenage boys and girls drifted over from the direction of the back wall, but I never looked back. walking steadily toward the safe main road one step at a time. The moment I stepped out of the teaching building, the morning breeze brushed my cheeks. It carried no sweltering heat. Yet it cleared my mind more than ever. Most students of the entire senior 3 grade were surging toward the alley by the back wall on the west side of the campus. The crowd was dense, filled with the clamor of countless footsteps. Every single one shared the exact same goal: take a shortcut, save time, seek ease. None paid the slightest heed to the repeated safety warnings issued by the school. I followed the neatly paved walkway toward the main gate, walking at an unhurried pace and deliberately putting distance between myself and the group. I had barely gone a few steps when Chushisha's voice called out from behind me. Breathless from running, she soon caught up beside me, whining, "Are you really taking the main gate?" She stepped in front to block my path. Strands of messy hair fell across her forehead. Her stationery bag and exam admission ticket were clutched tight in her hands, her eyes brimming with confusion and helpless disappointment. As if she despaired over my foolishness. I just checked with Zhao Heng and the others. No one patrols the back wall at all. The security guard went to make rounds in the cafeteria this morning. So it's the perfect window. A dozen of us are going together. Climbing the wall takes mere seconds, and crossing the road is just 2 quick steps. It's genuinely totally safe. I lifted my eyes to look at her, the best friend to whom I'd poured out my heart for 2 full years. In my past life, I'd been persuaded by those exact words of absolute safety and reluctantly followed them down the shortcut. It was this very girl who, after the catastrophe, lay in a hospital bed with tear-streaked eyes, telling everyone that I'd spouted ominous remarks first thing in the morning, that my loose tongue had summoned the disaster. In this new life, gazing at her pure yet shallow concern, my heart stirred not a single ripple, only cold, unshakable calm. "There's no need to take risks," I replied flatly, refusing to yield an inch. "The school forbids climbing the walls. It's not worth breaking the rules just to shave off a few minutes." Ugh, can't you see what's at stake? Who rigidly sticks to rules at a time like this? Chu Zhisha stamped her foot in anxiety and grabbed my arm again, her grip far tighter than before. Being late for the Gaokao means instant disqualification from the exam. Can school rules compare to 3 years of grueling study? You're just far too inflexible. Just then, Yi Zhaoheng hurried over, flanked by Wei Xingyao and Shan Muyao. The small group half surrounded me on the walkway, the arrogance and conceit of teenage boys rolling off them in waves. Yi Zhaoheng halted, his gaze sharp, carrying the natural authority of the class's de facto leader. Gao Wanning, "I'll ask you one last time, are you coming with us? The main gate road is packed with morning rush hour traffic and endless traffic lights. If you get stuck, you'll have no one to blame but yourself when you're crying over missed exam time," he said with unwavering certainty. "I've watched the route for 3 days straight. This shortcut by the back wall is the only guaranteed way to arrive without delay today." Wei Xingyao chimed in with a laid-back, conformist tone typical of a follower. "He's right. Zhao Heng never makes reckless calls. If he says it's fine, it's definitely fine. If you head down the main road alone and some minor holdup makes you miss entry, the loss won't be worth it. We're all only looking out for you." Shan Muyao stood to one side, rolling her eyes faintly, thinly veiled malice lacing her words. "I think she's just too cowardly, scared of falling, scared of anything going wrong. But this is the Gaokao. What good does timidity do anyone? She deserves the long, tiring walk." Her words were mild on the surface, yet they struck at the pervasive mindset among students back then. Bold rule-bending meant quick wit, while abiding by regulations marked you as weak. Several classmates passing by paused to watch and mutter among themselves, "Why can't they talk her around? Gao Wanning usually gets top grades. How can she be so pedantic at such a critical moment? Sticking with the crowd so much safer. Going alone such a bad call." The murmurs drifted into my ears. In my past life, I would have panicked instantly, terrified of being ostracized and mocked. Even filled with unease, I would have caved and followed them. Now, all I felt was ridicule. Every one of them defined safety by their shallow understanding, hid behind group conformity to dismiss all dangers. They failed to grasp that the true peril never lay in that low wall but the main road beyond it. crowded with heavy freight trucks plagued by massive blind spots. I lifted my eyes and swept over each of their faces in turn. Stubborn, impulsive Yi Zhaohang, mindlessly conformist Wei Xingyao, short-sighted, self-serving Shan Muyao, and Chu Xixia. Full of well-meaning goodwill yet utterly lacking sound judgment. They were all 17, youthful and vibrant, destined for boundless bright futures yet on the most pivotal day of their lives. They chose to march straight toward ruin with their own hands. I still uttered not a single word of warning. The bitter lesson of my previous life was etched deep in my bones. Heartfelt reminders never earned gratitude, only resistance, sneers, and groundless blame laid at my feet once disaster struck. I could not save those who insisted on walking into harm's way, nor would I bear the cost of others' foolishness ever again. I'm not coming. I pulled my arm free of Chu Xixiao's grasp. My voice gentle yet unyielding. You take your shortcut, and I'll follow the proper path. We each make our own choices, and neither will hold the other back. Yi Zhaohang's face darkened completely. My rejection stoking his teenage competitive streak. Fine. If you're sad on being stubborn, there's nothing we can do. When all of us are seated in the exam hall on time, don't come crying if you're late and barred from testing. We warned you. Suit yourself. I replied coolly. Ugh. She's impossible to reason with. Shan Muyao scoffed. We offer kindness and get ingratitude in return. Let's go and leave her be. We're wasting precious time. With that, the group stopped pestering me and turned to stride quickly toward the west wall. Chu Xixiao brought up the rear, glancing back at me every 2 steps, her gaze filled with pity and sorrow. Wanning, you're going to regret this. I stood rooted to the spot, watching their figures merge into the surging stream of students, dozens of young faces laughing, shoving and joking, joyfully hurrying toward what they believed was a harmless shortcut. Some horsed around competing over who could scale the wall fastest. Others daydreamed about the vacation after exams. A few grumbled about the tedious long walk via the main gate. All of them brimmed with youthful spirit, completely oblivious to the catastrophic disaster lying in wait for them. I tore my gaze away, spared them no further glance, and turned to walk straight toward the school's main entrance. The asphalt beneath my feet was smooth and wide, lined with dedicated pedestrian walkways on both sides. The road was orderly, traffic flowing steadily, longer and more time-consuming as it was. This was the only route that could safeguard my life today. I pressed forward step by step, shutting out all the commotion echoing from behind me. I knew full well every stride I took was severing myself completely from the tragedy of my past life. They chose shortcuts, chose to rely on luck, chose to ignore rules and mortal danger. I chose steadiness, chose to follow the rules, chose to protect the rest of my life. From this day of the college entrance exam onward, our lives would diverge forever. I would not rescue the willfully ignorant, nor redeem those trapped by their own obsessions. Given a second life, I would live solely for myself. The exam building came faintly into view in the distance, bathed in soft sunlight, the road ahead stretching open and bright. Meanwhile, over by the noisy back wall far behind me, death already lingered in silence, waiting for the group of teenagers to step into the trap. I followed the school's main walkway all the way forward, my steps steady without the slightest trace of anxiety in my heart. The candidate passage at the main gate was wide and well organized. Teachers on duty stood at fixed spots along the route, continuously guiding students taking the main gate to move in orderly lines. Patrol security vehicles cruised slowly past the roadside, and a sense of thorough safety and order prevailed everywhere, compared with the reckless gamble taken by the crowd near the back wall. The contrast could not have been starker. After walking roughly 100 meters out of the school gate, rapid footsteps suddenly echoed behind me. 2 figures hurried to catch up. It was Ji Lepeng, a classmate of mine. Alongside a girl I barely knew, both of them had chosen to head for the exam venue via the main gate alone. Catching sight of the neatly arranged document pouch in my hand, Ji Lepeng shifted sideways, slowed his pace to walk beside me, and spoke in a calm tone. I saw you exchanging a few words with Yi Zhaohang and the others by the teaching building entrance a moment ago. I gave a slight nod and replied softly. It was hardly an argument. We simply made different choices. I knew you wouldn't go climbing over the wall with them. Ji Lipeng smiled, sounding quite insightful. That group is far too impulsive, always looking for shortcuts to cut corners. When it comes to something as vital as the college entrance exam, stability ought to come first. Saving a few minutes means nothing at all. If any accident strikes, 3 years of hard work will all go to waste. His words hit the core truth, the very lesson I'd learned at the cost of half a lifetime of regret in my past life. Most of my classmates viewed caution as rigid stubbornness and gambling on luck as cleverness, while only a small number of clear-headed students knew to respect unseen dangers. The girl walking with us chimed in, murmuring with a sigh, "They tried to drag me into climbing the wall too just now. And I turned them down right away. That road outside the back wall is swarming with large trucks. And they drive so fast early in the morning. Dashing straight across the road is unbelievably risky." I listened closely, my heart stirring faintly. Not everyone blindly followed the crowd. There were always a few who could see the hidden hazards. Yet such clear-minded people were too few to rouse the majority who clung to their reckless luck as a group. Ji Lipeng nodded firmly. Exactly. The school has repeatedly forbidden leaving campus by scaling the walls, and stressed time and again that traffic on the road behind the wall is chaotic, but they just tuned it all out. Yi Zhaoheng wields plenty of influence in our class. Once he took the lead, most of our classmates tagged along without a second thought for the consequences. I said nothing more and merely kept walking silently. I could not reveal that I knew the catastrophe that was about to unfold. All my emotions remained locked deep inside as I steadily traveled the safe path. Far off in the direction of the back wall, noise still lingered. Even from this distance, I could faintly hear teenagers laughing and horsing around, shouting to one another for help clambering over the bricks. I could easily picture the scene. Yi Zhaoheng stepping onto the bricks to haul himself onto the wall first, reaching down to pull his classmates up behind him. Chu Zhixia carefully edging along the wall's ledge, lowered safely with everyone's support. Wei Xingyao, Shan Muyao and the rest chatting casually as they clustered together to cross the road, consumed only by their rush to reach the exam site, oblivious to the roaring oncoming traffic. In my past life, I would have been right there amid that commotion, swept along toward certain doom by the crowd. This life, however, I had pulled completely away, standing apart from it all, seeming to notice my unruffled mood. Ji Lipeng struck up casual conversation. "Aren't you worried about running late at all? The main gate route definitely adds a lot of walking time." "I'll make it," I answered flatly. I set aside extra time beforehand, so I won't miss the exam. In truth, I knew the timeline better than anyone. I had lived through every minute of this exact day in my previous life. Though the wall shortcut appeared to save time, it forced them to dash across the road during the peak window for freight trucks, a fatal miscalculation none of them could possibly foresee. The girl beside us voiced a flicker of concern. "I hope nothing bad happens to them. It's just climbing a wall to get to the exam. Surely everything will be fine." I stared down at the smooth pavement beneath my feet, feeling utterly unmoved. Nothing would be fine. Every reckless gamble based on luck comes with a steep, unspoken price tag. I would offer no comfort, no agreement, and certainly no warning. My soft heart and goodwill had long since been worn away by the unfair blame and twisted accusations that followed the disaster in my past life. They had chosen to ignore school rules, disregard deadly risks, and chase trivial shortcuts, and now they would bear every consequence themselves. The three of us kept walking at an even pace. Along the way, we passed numerous exam candidates from other classes taking the main gate route. Everyone moved in orderly lines, calm and unhurried, occasionally exchanging quiet reminders about the exam rules. Wrapped in a quiet, peaceful atmosphere, barely a dozen minutes later, the entrance to the exam center came into clear view ahead. Bright red banners for the college entrance exam hung prominently above the gate. Police officers, exam invigilators and volunteers stood posted at the entrance with clear divisions of labor, and security checkpoints flowed without obstruction. When we reached the cordon surrounding the exam venue, Ji Lipeng halted and turned to me. "We'll split into separate queues now. Our exam halls are on different floors. Wish you a smooth performance." "You too," I replied softly. The two of them turned and merged into different lines of candidates. I stood at the end of a neat queue alone, taking out my ID card and admission ticket as I waited quietly for identity verification before entering. Sunlight fell warm and steady over my shoulders. Without a trace of panic, I glanced up at the time. There were still 2 full quarters of an hour until the official start of the exam. I had more than enough time to settle my nerves and steady my mindset. Just as I lifted my foot to step toward the security checkpoint, a deafening, thunderous crash suddenly boomed in the far distance behind me, from the main freight road beside the school's back wall. The sound was deep yet shrill, tearing violently through the quiet of the early morning. The queued candidates erupted into an immediate stir, all craning their necks to peer toward the noise. What was that sound? It sounded like a car crash. That was incredibly loud. I think it came from the suburban freight highway nearby. A chorus of shocked murmurs rose all around us. Teachers and police on duty instantly grew alert, striding quickly to stare in the direction the crash had come from. I stood motionless in the middle of the crowd. No flicker of surprise crossing my eyes, only complete, unshakable calm. It had happened. The nightmare that had haunted me for half my previous life had arrived right on schedule. Only this time, I stood safely on the far shore, firmly grasping hold of my own life. Those classmates who had stubbornly chased the shortcut had finally run headlong into the dead-end fate had laid out for them, barely a few heartbeats after the shrill crash. Every examinee at the exam venue gate fixed their attention on the road behind them. Waves of murmurs overlapped one another, rendering the air thick with tension. A male teacher on duty grabbed his walkie-talkie and hurried outside the cordon, pressing the buttons rapidly with his fingertips. His voice urgent. A violent collision has occurred on the western stretch of the main road. Send 2 security officers to investigate at once and maintain order along the route. Do not disturb the candidates inside the venue. The girl standing ahead of me clutched her documents tightly, her shoulders trembling slightly as she whispered to her friend beside her. Could something truly terrible have happened? The noise didn't sound like a minor scrape between small cars. That road is packed with heavy freight trucks every day. If one was speeding, a collision with anything would be catastrophic. Her companion replied in a hushed tone. I stood quietly in the queue, fingers wrapped around my transparent document pouch, my features betraying no emotion whatsoever. The panic, curiosity and unease swirling through everyone else meant nothing to me. I already knew the horrific scene hidden behind that deafening bang, and a heavy stillness settled deep within my chest. The line at the identity verification checkpoint crept forward slowly. Invigilators cross-checked documents and scanned stationery one by one, following the procedure methodically, yet fragmented news drifting in from outside frayed every candidate's nerves. Passers-by on electric scooters halted far beyond the guardrail, chatting with traffic police stationed there, and snatches of their conversation drifted to my ears on the wind. It was a group of students in school uniforms darting across the road all together. A freight truck couldn't brake in time and hit them head-on. A dozen kids are lying on the pavement, badly injured by the looks of it. Ambulances are en route already. These 2 sentences sparked an even greater uproar in the queue. Many students from my school paled, grabbing hold of one another to confirm whether each had taken the main gate route. So many people from our class went to climb the back wall. Could it be them? A boy's voice shook as he instinctively scanned the crowd, searching for Yi Zhaohang, Chu Zhixia and the others. Another girl's eyes instantly welled with tears. She twisted the cuff of her uniform and mumbled to herself. They tried to drag me into taking that shortcut this morning. Luckily, I made up an excuse about forgetting my stationery and doubled back to take the main gate. Whispers of relief and lingering fear rippled through the crowd. Some were grateful they hadn't followed the crowd. Others feared for the safety of their classmates who'd scaled the wall. Only I stood rigid, unshaken. I knew the group that had climbed the wall and crossed the road included the 4 who'd badgered me to join them that morning, plus more than 10 other classmates who'd blindly tagged along. Moments later, our head teacher Fang Yinzhou sprinted all the way to the exam venue gate. His shirt collar hung open, his forehead glistening with cold sweat. The calm, gentle demeanor he usually carried completely gone. He seized the nearest student from our class, his voice trembling uncontrollably. You came via the main gate. Where are Zhaohang, Qixia and the rest? Did they arrive here with you? The student shook his head frantically. Sir, They agreed first thing this morning to climb the back wall for a shortcut. I didn't go with them and have no idea where they are. Passers-by just said there was an accident on the road, and all the victims were our school uniform. Fang Yinzhou staggered, grabbing the nearby railing to steady himself, a stifled groan escaping his throat. He had warned the class more than a dozen times against sneaking out over the back wall, repeatedly stressing the dangerous heavy truck traffic on the suburban arterial road, explaining that poor visibility for lorry drivers at dawn made jaywalking absolutely lethal. Still, he had failed to stop that group of teenagers gambling on luck. He turned to scan the queue of entering candidates, his gaze sweeping every face. When his eyes landed on me, he rushed over, a faint flicker of desperate hope in his voice. Gao Wanning, were you with them this morning? Did Shisha mention they'd avoid the main freight road on their way? I met my head teacher's bloodshot eyes and replied evenly. After packing my stationery at dawn, they headed for the west wall and invited me to come along. I turned them down and took the main gate the entire time. I never crossed paths with them. The rigid tension in Fang Yinzhou's shoulders deflated halfway. He let out a bitter sigh. I warned them over and over. I feared exactly this kind of accident. Those children chased a few minutes' convenience, wagering their own safety. Yet not a single one would listen to a word of advice. Several classmates who'd overheard our conversation turned to stare, murmuring amongst themselves. So Gao Wanning never went to climb the wall with them this morning. That's why she's standing here unruffled. Everyone badgered her to take the shortcut earlier, but she refused outright. I thought she was far too rigid back then, but now it's clear she was the only level-headed one. If someone had managed to hold them back, this disaster never would have happened. Their quiet chatter washed over me. Not a single person asked why I hadn't warned them about the deadly road beyond the wall. No one knew I had foreseen the fatal danger long before the tragedy unfolded. In my past life, I'd begged and pleaded with every one of them, only to be met with scorn and blame. In this life, I'd chosen silence to protect myself and no one would hold me accountable for it. Such was human nature. Earnest warnings were written off as ominous talk, while quiet detachment was merely accepted as a personal choice, free from reproach. Soon my turn came for document verification. After checking my details, the invigilator gestured for me to enter the exam building. I turned and climbed the steps, still able to hear Fang Yinzhou's panicked voice contacting hospitals and the students' families, alongside waves of mournful murmurs from the other candidates. The exam building blocked out all outside noise. The corridors fell silent, each classroom marked with a quiet please sign. I found my assigned seat and sat down. The desktop was clean and flat. I laid out my pencils, eraser and black signature pen before leaning back against the chair to take a slow, deep breath. Only 15 minutes remained until the exam began. Gentle sunlight filtered through the windows, and cool indoor air chased away all restlessness. Soft sobs drifted from the next classroom, undoubtedly candidates distraught after hearing about their injured classmates. The boy sitting beside the window next to me kept glancing outside, unable to settle his racing mind. His pen-wielding hand shaking non-stop as he failed to focus on reviewing his notes. As for myself, I felt no guilt, no regret, not a shred of panic. I had given them every chance to choose wisely. Each time they begged me to join them, I had made clear the main gate route was far safer. They had willfully ignored mortal peril for a trivial shortcut. Everyone must bear the consequences of their own decisions, and I was under no obligation to sacrifice my own future for a crowd that refused to listen. Vivid images recounted by the passers-by flashed through my mind. Yi Zhaoheng leading the pack, Chu Zhixia sheltered safely in their center, Wei Xingyao and Shan Muyao close behind. The teenagers laughed and chatted as they stepped into the roadway. When a fully loaded heavy truck careened around the bend, its towering chassis completely blocked the driver's line of sight, rendering the disaster irreversible. That blood-soaked scene had haunted my dreams for over a decade in my past life. The accusations of others, the tearful pleas of the victims' families, had crushed me until I wasted away and drew my last breath. Now I had evaded that path of ruin, sitting safely in the exam hall with a chance to rewrite my fate, and that was the greatest strength granted to me by rebirth. The venue loudspeaker crackled to life, broadcasting a reminder for candidates to power off all electronic devices before answer sheets and exam papers were distributed. I pushed all chaotic thoughts aside, fixed my gaze on the blank new test paper, and picked up my signature pen. My fingers steady without the slightest tremor. The catastrophe outside, the sorrow and gossip of strangers, none of it concerned me now. Today I only needed to focus on answering the questions, and grasp the future that belonged solely to me. The tragedy beyond the wall had already unfolded. No amount of regret could reverse what was done. All I could do was seize this college entrance exam firmly, and forge a life utterly different from the one I had lived before. The instant the bell rang to signal the end of the final foreign language exam, I set down my pen without the slightest tension in my fingertips. The heavy weight that had lingered in my heart for days completely lifted. Invigilators collected the exam papers and answer sheets in orderly batches and only allowed us to leave the exam building once they confirmed everything was accounted for. Stepping out of the exam venue gate, I found the entrance thronged with parents waiting for their children. Voices buzzed all around, and relaxed grins from relieved examinees were everywhere, yet a thick, unshakable gloom hung over the crowd from my school. Many parents surrounded our school's students, pressing them for every detail of the morning traffic accident. As soft sighs and murmurs of regret rippled nonstop, Ji Lupeng happened to exit alongside me. Spotting me, he slowed his pace to walk at my side, his tone heavy with undisguised sorrow. News from school has been tightly suppressed these past few days. They only told us the full story once all exams finished. Have you heard? Not a single one of the dozen students who climbed the wall was able to complete the college entrance exam in full. I gave a faint nod. I'd caught scattered snippets of information along the way, though I'd never actively sought out details. I've heard. Yi Zhaoheng suffered a comminuted fracture to his right leg. Even after reconstructive surgery, he'll walk with a permanent limp and never run the way he once did. Chu Zhixia sustained a head trauma with intracranial hematoma. Doctors say she'll live with chronic dizziness and severe memory loss for the rest of her life. Multiple bones in Wei Xingyao's right hand were shattered, making writing with a pen agonizing. Studying and solving exam questions will be an immense struggle for him going forward. Shan Muyao's internal organs were damaged by the impact. She'll never be able to overexert herself and must rely on long-term medication to manage her condition. Ji Lupeng recounted each person's fate in a low voice, his brows tightly knit. The rest of the classmates who scaled the wall all suffered at minimum hairline fractures, and every single one missed the entire Gaokao. I had known all these outcomes from the very morning I woke Reborn. Hearing them recounted by someone else stirred no trace of pity within me, only quiet calm. They had held the chance to rewrite their destinies in their own hands. Yet they had shattered their futures of their own free will. No one could bear the cost of their reckless choices for them. We walked side by side to the designated school assembly point. Our head teacher Fang Yinzhou stood beneath a leafy tree, his eyes ringed with deep exhaustion. Just a handful of days had aged him visibly. When he saw Ji Lupeng and me approaching, he forced a thin smile. You two took the main gate the entire time and finished every exam safely. It's a miracle neither of you were caught up in the disaster. No sooner had he finished speaking than two female classmates walked over together. Their gazes settled on me, filled with uncomprehending confusion. Gao Wanning, when the rest of us begged you to climb the wall with us that morning, you must have sensed something was wrong, so why didn't you utter a single word of warning? If you'd spoken up back then, we might not have insisted on taking that deadly road. At her words, several nearby students halted their conversations, all eyes swiveling toward me. Some held faint resentment in their stares, others only confusion, all waiting for my reply. Fang Yinzhou did not cut in immediately. He too wanted to hear why I'd chosen to leave alone that morning. Ji Lupeng stayed quiet beside me, refusing to take sides with anyone. I lifted my head and met every gaze unflinchingly, my tone even, my reasoning clear, without a hint of evasion. Early that morning, Teacher Fang repeatedly reminded the whole class that the main freight road beyond the back wall swarmed with trucks. That morning traffic posed grave danger, and that scaling the wall to leave campus was strictly forbidden. Every single one of us heard those words. I told the group time and again that the main gate route, while longer, was safe and compliant, and there was no reason to risk our lives to save a few minutes travel time, but no one was willing to listen. One girl shot back at once, We only took it as routine safety advice from teachers. How could any of us have imagined such a horrific crash would actually happen? If you'd spelled out the true danger, we would have thought twice. How could I spell it out? I countered, my voice steady, free of any bitterness. When I told everyone the road was unsafe, they merely dismissed me as timid and overly rigid, pressing me to come along by warning I'd be late. Every single one of them was convinced a large group crossing the road could not possibly come to harm, convinced truck drivers would brake in time, convinced the tiny time saved was worth the gamble. When people cling to blind optimism, no amount of outside advice is anything more than groundless worry to them. Ji Lupeng spoke up to back me then. That's the truth. Everyone was blinded by the urge to cut their travel time short. Deaf to all persuasion, no matter how much Gao Wanning might have said. She could never have swayed their minds. Fang Yinzhou let out a soft sigh and massaged his temples with one hand. I bear part of the blame for this. I stressed the dangers repeatedly yet failed to make the children truly internalize the warning. But what's done is done. No amount of haggling over who was right or wrong can give back the Gaokao they missed, nor mend the permanent injuries they carry. Every person must bear the consequences of their own choices. The girl who'd questioned me pressed her lips tight and dropped the argument, the resentment in her eyes fading into pure sorrow. Everyone understood that the decision to climb the wall as a group had been entirely voluntary. No blame could be laid on me for failing to issue an explicit, desperate warning. The crowd slowly dispersed as parents collected their children. Ji Lupeng bid me farewell, and we agreed to contact each other once exam results were released. Only Fang Yinzhou and I remained beneath the tree's shade. When I watched you walk calmly into the exam venue alone that morning, I felt an enormous weight lift off my chest. Fang Yinzhou said quietly, staring out at the empty road in the distance. I've seen countless kind-hearted students who, through no fault of their own, become trapped in self-blame for years after misfortunes befall others. You see things with remarkable clarity. I simply know that trying to wake someone who pretends to be asleep only lands you in endless trouble. I replied evenly. Fang Yinzhou nodded faintly, offering no further words of consolation. He merely told me to head home and rest well while waiting for the score release. I walked home alone along the main gate road. Warm sunlight spilled down overhead. Shops and pedestrians lining the street moved in orderly rhythm, and the entire stretch felt peaceful and secure. In my past life, I had spent more than a decade trapped in crippling self-blame and unceasing condemnation from others after the catastrophe. Victims' families came to my door weeping. Former classmates muttered privately that I ought to have said more, and strangers labeled me cold and heartless for holding back warnings. All that negativity slowly drained the life out of me, until I wasted away in poverty and illness, meeting a lonely, unremarkable end. In this second life, I refused to force myself to save a group set on self-destruction. I held fast to my boundaries, chose the safe, lawful path, and sat through the entire college entrance exam unharmed. Brief judgment from others could never shake me. I no longer carried guilt that did not belong to me, nor would I drown myself in grief over a tragedy others had brought upon themselves. A few weeks later, the Gaokao scores were published. My mark far exceeded the admission cutoff for key first-tier universities, granting me the freedom to pick my ideal city and major. Ji Lupeng performed steadily and also earned excellent scores, successfully submitting applications to his dream schools. In stark contrast, the classmates injured from climbing the wall faced devastating futures. Some were confined to bed rest for an entire year and forced to repeat their senior 3-year. Their permanent physical impairments a lifelong burden. Others sustained irreversible damage that drove them to abandon higher education entirely, leaving school early to seek menial work. Two entirely separate paths in life had split irrevocably that morning outside the back wall, never to cross again. Occasionally I heard news of them from former classmates, yet I listened with unwavering calm, feeling no stir of emotion. I had never sought to harm anyone, and I had fulfilled my duty of telling them about the safer route. They had freely rejected security for the sake of a reckless shortcut. Reborn once more. I did not wield fate to save everyone around me, only saved myself. I would no longer be the self-sacrificing people-pleaser who drained her spirit for others, nor force enlightenment on those stubbornly lost in their own delusions. Guarding my own path forward was the best ending this new life could offer me.